I'm 40 years old, and I have had this illness for several years, and I am not responding to treatment. Most of my video diaries are focusing on my journey to the Eternal Spirit Foundation in Basel, Switzerland, where I will utilize their human rights law for foreigners with incurable illnesses. As many of you know, Switzerland, along with the Netherlands, are the only countries in the world that will allow dying with dignity for patients with non-terminal illnesses. Now, MS does eventually become terminal, but it's a little bit of semantics in the sense that it is not considered a terminal illness that you would die from the illness, but you die of secondary causes, i.e. you become completely paralyzed, you lose ability to swallow, to have many internal functions, to breathe eventually, and you die from these secondary causes. But as you know, with progressive MS, it can take a long time to see to the hospice eligible terminal phase. Now, despite the suffering of these neurodegenerative illnesses in the United States, they will not allow a person such as myself with advanced progressive disease to opt for the dying with dignity medication. They want to see that you are almost dead. And this is a really cruel problem in the way that these laws are written. And there's an epidemic of people right now trying to figure out ways to self-determine on their own, or raising the resources to go to wonderful countries like Switzerland that welcome foreigners, or they will take matters into their own hands or get involved with underground organizations. For somebody with minimal use of their arms and legs and cognitive problems such as myself, some of these methods are really not possible, in the sense that I would not be able to carry them through, and I would possibly risk a botched scenario. And that is not something that I want to endure, or anybody else should, given the amount of suffering that already occurs with these illnesses. I think that I have the right to peaceful death at a time of my own choosing. And given my level of disability, I think that the medical establishment should offer me this if they cannot afford a cure for this illness, if they cannot even stop my progression or help me to be in a scenario that is endurable, then they should offer this as an option, but they don't. The best that they have is palliative care, but palliative care for progressive degenerative illness is really nothing. I was just on the phone with St. Vincent's Pain and Spine in Santa Fe, and I have failed multiple oral agents for pain medicine, and they just started me on something called fentanyl, which is one of the reasons why I haven't been doing video diaries, and my train of thought is pretty bad. This is a heavy duty pain medicine. It's a patch that you put on your body, and it's for really heavy duty pain. Mine is of a spinal cord origin. And sometimes they use this more often for cancer patients. But the fentanyl patch, I was telling my caregiver this morning that I felt like a heroin addict when I tried to get out of bed. I just literally dropped to the ground. It just totally knocks you out, and that is their idea for palliative medicine, is to just zonk you out and make you not feel the pain, and that's supposedly a solution to the suffering that you're going through, because they're not going to offer you dying with dignity, and they're not going to consider you hospice eligible yet. So palliative medicine in the context of progressive chronic illnesses like progressive MS, ALS, Huntington's, all of these illnesses. What it usually means is like a fentanyl patch or morphine, and that's what they've been trying me on. So at a time of my own choosing, I will see that there is no more quality of life and the suffering is just too much from this disease, and will decide to get on that plane and go to Switzerland. I don't have any options despite my constant calling, Compassion and Choices in Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, and trying to get them to give me some kind of option here. The only thing that they've offered me is, hey, if you want to stop eating and drinking, VSED, that's what it's called, we will consider you terminal after 48 hours of no food and water, and then hospice will come in and ameliorate your pain again, more palliative medicine, with a fentanyl drip, and we will give you ice chips and check in on you around the clock, and this is going to make the process of my body essentially dehydrating until death, which for a young person can take about 4 weeks. So this is the only path that they have offered me, VSED. It is not actually what it's touted to be. It is not really a peaceful way to die. If you are older and you are naturally starting to not want to eat or drink, and you're really frail in the bed, it can be a natural conclusion. But for somebody with an intractable scenario such as myself, who's young and still has a strong somewhat constitution, this is an unbearable way to go. But this is what Compassion and Choices is offering me anywhere in the United States. If I relocated to Oregon, Vermont, it wouldn't matter. This is what they have for me. I have considered other options that I'm unable to facilitate on my own, and I am left with Switzerland. So one of the things that I was talking about in this process as I get ready to go is this difficulty in deciding what's called the date, your appointment with Dignitas or your appointment with Life Circle. And making an appointment essentially means that you have decided the day that you are going to die, and you've gone through all the legal processes and been given the green light, and you fly over in advance. Some people have stayed weeks before, some people have gone within 3 days, and every time I try to set this date, I wind up feeling at ease at first. Like this one woman said in San Luis Obispo that had gone through the Dying with Dignity process. She said, I don't have to do this anymore. She had a big tumor in the side of her face, and she was dying of cancer. And I understood what she meant. What she meant was, I don't have to do this. I don't have to live in this this illness anymore. I can be free. I can let go. And that's really what euthanasia is about. It's about, there's a famous book called Final Acts of Love, and that is essentially what it is. It's about loving people who have these illnesses, and the ultimate act of love is to let them be free and let them go. And then, of course, the ultimate act of self-love, in my opinion, in this situation is to let myself be free and to give myself this option. So I don't have to do this anymore, and I feel at ease, and I feel relieved, because I'm inside of this medical nightmare where they are giving me more steroids, more antidepressive, more anti this, more anti, and all of it is just suppressing symptoms and actually in some ways making the disease at a more chronic state and keeping the whole medical machinery going. And the deeper into this I get, and having had family members die by the hands of allopathic medicine, I actually kind of feel it's premeditated in some ways, that they do have the answers to these illnesses, but that's another video diary. In any event, I'm inside this medical nightmare where they cannot get me better. They cannot even offer me really any quality of life. The best that they can do, at least in the United States, is to give me morphine or fentanyl, which will knock me out and put me in the bed for 12 hours a day so that I'm just not even awake for my life. And then tell me that if I don't want any more, I can stop eating and drinking. And then they'll come in with more fentanyl and morphine. So this is the best that they can offer. I'm inside this medical nightmare, and the idea of not having to do this anymore, as she said, is really, dare I say, exciting. You know, I feel like there might be some cause for celebration that I don't have to do this anymore. My spirit can be free. This is about freedom. This is the ultimate act of love for oneself and others going through illnesses like this. But whenever I try to set a date or an appointment, as it were, I go through this thing where in the next 24 hours I go through real shock over the fact that I had written to my contact and said, okay, now I think it's time to make preparations, and then the next day I'll realize how serious this is, you know, that you have to be ready, and I will go through this ultimate like shock, you know, over the fact that it really is ending a life, and also, you know, questioning, have I really tried everything? Was there some option that I didn't entertain? Was there some stem cell clinical trial where they could go in my spinal cord and reverse the damage? And I understand the science. A lot of this is only being done on mice in laboratories, and it's not ready in a clinical setting, but this is also part of the whole culture and how they keep you going and hooked into it. You always think, oh, there's something coming down the pipeline. Oh, you're so young, you know, they're finding cures for MS every day. But I have to really be very honest with myself about the damage that I have in my brainstem and my entire spinal cord, and really understanding the architecture of all this and how you can't just, you know, pull stem cell out of the fatty tissue and inject it into the spinal cord and all of a sudden you're better. But they keep you kind of hooked on false hope, at least in the American medical culture. When I was abroad in Europe trying to get the green light in Switzerland, I saw some wonderful female neurologists in Italy, and they were like very, very clear with me. They said, there's no cure for this. We don't understand MS. We think it's the Epstein-Barr virus. We don't know. With progressive MS, we really don't have an idea. So, you know, here you are going into the wheelchair and the paralysis is moving. And they were very frank with me. And I felt with doctors over there in Northern Europe that I could actually talk about exit. You can't talk about exit here in the United States with your doctors. You might have a like-minded therapist, such as I have, or, you know, activist or friend, but you can't exactly go to your primary care doctor or your neurologist or the MS Society and say, hey, I'm in a completely irreversible decline, total suffering, no cure in sight, not even a way to maintain or stabilize. Can you help me? Can you please help me? You know, opt out and have peace and be free. They're not going to offer that. They don't consider it part of their milieu or medical service. From what I understand, with a lot of the progressive laws that are happening in Canada, they are allowing people with irreversible decline. And they are considering MAID, medical aid in dying. They don't call it suicide up there. They're considering this part of the trajectory of what it is that physicians do, right? That they help give birth, they help take care of you in the middle of your life and all the issues that could come up for somebody, and they can also offer medical aid in dying for people in end scenarios such as myself. So it's really much more accepted and much more progressive up there in Canada. But in the United States, it's actually getting worse. It's if you try to procure the poison or Nembutal on your own, there have been a lot of stories where people are visited by Homeland Security, or they get a bad deal. There are a lot of faux websites showing up where they pretend to be a peaceful exit, service, and they are, some operation in the Ukraine or whatever, and they want to just get your money. So it's sick, but that kind of thing is going on. And people with these degenerative illnesses are desperate, obviously. So they're going to get on the computer and they're going to Google Nembutal, or they're going to Google peaceful dying and try to figure out whatever they can, because it's not being offered by their medical providers. It's not even being talked about. And in states where it is legal within the 6-month terminal phase, there are doctors that say, oh, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that. And they're not even being kind enough to make a referral to a doctor who would prescribe you the death with dignity medication. So much is going on in the U.S. with these laws, and we're hoping for reform in Oregon, Brittany's bill, that would allow people like myself with progressive illness to get this option. Now, that will be heard in June of 2019. I don't know that I can hold on that long, so I'm really, with my spinal cord deterioration, just trying to enjoy each day as much as I can, and telling family members and friends that I am, more than likely going to be going on that plane soon. So that's kind of what's going on. My paralysis is definitely spreading. It is very, very scary to be a young person in a body that is just deteriorating, really just losing all ability to move and all sensation. So I try to have the best quality of life that I can have, and do whatever bit of activism that I can do virtually, and reaching out to different people. So I'll continue to chart what is happening, and I also have a little GoFundMe that I could raise some monies for when I do go abroad, to utilize this right in Switzerland and have a caregiver and be able to afford the plane flight and all of that, because it's thousands of dollars that nobody should ever have to pay. But unfortunately, we are forced into this position because we cannot die peacefully in the United States. And this issue is not going to go away. There is an epidemic of these illnesses right now in the United States and everywhere, but particularly the US. And it's not going to go away, because so many people want to have this right. And I think the biggest thing that I want to drive home in this video diary is the fact that I'm actually being robbed of quality of life, having to think about all the desperate ways that I could die and be free of this illness every day, and having to spend so much energy and time on it, when I could just be enjoying life, knowing that I can get that prescription from my family physician, and then my family physician would come to my house and sit with me and give me the medication and be by my side and be a real human being, right? This is the way it should be done. And when people know that they have this right, they can focus on the quality of life that they still have left, and they don't have to live in this desperation and fear. So we have to really bind together and fight for this, because people like myself, they are losing quality of life that they still have left, having to spend all this time on how am I going to secure this option for peaceful dying, because I certainly can't get it in my own country, and I can't get it with my own doctor, and my neurologist won't even talk about it with me. MS Society doesn't even want to talk about this if you call them and you talk to them. So these are my thoughts, and I thank you for listening.